police SUV and a sedan at $98,500, which includes $7,000 to fit the cars once we get them purchased. The bid came in at $115,445.70. When you add the $7,000 to that, we're now over $20,000 over budget. When it came in when we bought police vehicles, we normally had rebates, and when the tender went out, there was no rebates allowed. We got one bid. After the bid closed, the sole bidder advised us that rebates were now back in play. So where we are is council has the option legally in this situation to say, no, we're going back out to tender. You can negotiate with the current the bidder to get the price down, or you can just pay what the bidder's asking for the product. In this case, we are recommending, after discussions between the chief and the treasurer and myself, that we apply the rebates, and in this case, we believe the operational benefit warrants the $16,645 that you're going to need to take from reserve. As the management report indicates, these vehicles are getting hard to get. Director Rao was here last week or 2 weeks ago talking about hard to get items. It seems like this is going to be the story of 2023. Over budget from the estimates. Remember, we put these estimates together last July and August. The world has changed substantially, and it's impacting a whole lot of our procurement. So we are going to analyze on a case-by-case basis, and in this one, we're asking council to consider allocate the extra money, get the department the equipment that is needed to do the job, and I guess we'll keep an eye moving forward on the tenders that come in. At this point, the treasurer and I talked today. My belief is there's going to be some items that we simply won't be procuring because the cost will be so much higher than what we anticipated. But this is not one of the ones that we think you should cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duplessis.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what I'm hearing, and just to get it confirmed, so the staff, there's a level of certainty that this is going to be a long-term issue with this industry or this kind of sourcing. It's not something that, there's a supply issue for the next 2 months because of microchips. I've heard that, and that it'll be resolved and things go back to normal.
Yeah, the speaker, chief.
Through the chair to Councillor Duplessis. Just to give you an idea, last year we purchased 3 patrol cars. We did receive 2 of them. One of them is still back ordered. The money from capital was put back into reserve to cover the cost of that car. We still don't know when that car is coming, and in speaking with the dealership, right now it looks like 2022s will not even be built. They'll be 2023s, and they're hoping September that they'll start the manufacturing of the vehicles, which would still put us late towards the end of the year to receive the vehicles. And the concessions last year, just to give you an example, the same car after the rebate last year, I guess the base price before HST was just under $41,000. So there is a dramatic increase, and that's why we got caught off guard as far as what we had budgeted. We figured it was suffice funds, and it was based on the last couple of years. And as far as rebates, they went right through to the fleet department for Canada, and they said right now the concession of $3,500 per vehicle is probably, that's all you're going to see this year because of the backlog and caused by COVID to microchips and a number of other things.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, and that's the answer I wanted. You provoked a different question, though, if I may ask it. I know in our tenders, a lot of time the specs that we're asking for can determine what type of vehicle we're getting. Is there anything that we're seeing here or in the future that we would be looking for different levels of specs or different preferences in the car that would access a broader market?
They're called the police package vehicle, but they're very basic. They have rubber floor in them. There's no carpet. The back seats are vinyl. There's no big options with these vehicles. The biggest thing is they have a heavy-duty rad, heavy-duty alternator, all of the wiring for the light bar and all of the other emergency equipment is built into it. So those are the types of extras that you get, but it's not, you know, any of the other big options.
Right, so we're not looking for a certain level of car that's hard to get. We're
No,
looking for
no.
car.
This is the very basic police model that you can get.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor King.
Thank
And
you,
then
Your Worship.
Councillor Harris.
Paul, on the, you say you have one car that's supposed to come in September? One of the ones,
Last fall, we
One of the ones
received,
of the three?
we received two, and one is still backlogged somewhere in the
and that-
system.
that's already budgeted, right?
Yes, yeah.
Now, okay, the price of these vehicles, can we get away with another year? Because of
Well,
the,
I can
because
tell
of the
you,
price, I'm just wondering.
I can tell you right now, the vehicles that are earmarked to be replaced, one has 235,000 kilometers on it, and one has 216. And by the time we receive the cars, we're going to be getting close to 300,000 if they're still on the road. They could end up being parked by that time. Normally, we used to get rid of vehicles at 200,000 kilometers. We've pushed that last year to 250. And the costs, once we hit that 200,000 mark, the maintenance costs increase dramatically for the vehicles. And, you know, the goal is we have to keep them safe for the officers that are operating them. And if we end up parking them, then we're going to be into a real mess.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councillor King, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, Paul, you know, being in the business, I guess, yeah, you got to get your cars on order, obviously, and it's the right thing to do because you're not guaranteed anything. Looking back, even at your third one last year in this market, so and to be in order with 500 police vehicles, you know, for Canada, we're not at the top, and hopefully we're not at the bottom, but in between, we get them for our staff here in the city. Just to manage your mic, I'm just going through the tender, and I'm just having a hard time with the number. It says, after the tender was closed, we were advised by the bidder that the rebates were now available for the sedan SUV, thereby reducing the price for both vehicles to 103.7 plus HST. And on the next line, it says the combined price for the two vehicles is 108 and 145 once the HST has been applied, which does not include the 7,000 equipment transfer. I would think so, because to me, when I do it at the math, it looks like we're $11,000 over, not $16,000 over. So I think what I see, only $11,200 that you're looking
The
to over
other,
budget.
if I may,
Yeah.
through the chair to Councillor Harris, there's also the $7,000 to transfer the equipment on top of the cost of the vehicles.
Oh, Councillor Ross Robinson, thanks.
Yeah, I just see it. Yeah, it's 103.7 plus HST plus a $7,000, which will come to 110.7, and we had budgeted during budget time 98.5 with the 7. So to me, it's 11. It's still 11,000. We're $11,000 over budget. What it looks like, I'm not sure on that. If that's true or not, just if our numbers are correct or not.
Oh. This is to the manager? Yeah.
So it's 11, is it?
Shh, shh. Madam Clerk, you're saying there's two numbers there.
One of them was the original bid and then the second one.
Minus 23 and then minus 16. Oh, and option 2, 2 sedans for minus 12.
Well, we're not doing the two sedans because we can't do it under the standard. I'm not sure what,
It could have been an error in the math of my part.
oh, okay.
Yes.
So we will
But
check
we
the
will
math
I will clarify that.
before we, you know, if council sends us to a council meeting next week for a warrant,
It will be fixed.
we would refine the numbers to be sure.
Yes.
Still to you, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, no, I mean your SUV is 57.5 and your car is 53.1, which is roughly 10.7. And if you got $7,000 back, it's 103.7. Your number is correct. Your number below at 16, I think, is wrong because 103.7 plus 7 is just by these. No, I'm just going by your numbers. But anyway,
No, I'm not disputing.
to the chief, I will support it if it's 11 or 16 because you do need the vehicles by the sounds of your kilometers. So, but I think the numbers will come back a little bit less. I think by low.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Robinson, to you now.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make the point that, of course, I'll be supporting this. You know, we need the equipment to get the job done, and everybody knows that I'm not a fan of dipping into reserves and that sort of thing. However, 2016, 2017, and 2018 budgets, we strong-armed the chief into asking for one car rather than two. So they've been working very hard with lesser equipment for quite some time. And then last year during the budget process, to the chief's point, we felt that it was a good number and that we were in a position to purchase two. And anyway, the luck wasn't on our side. But anyway, with that, I'm still supportive of this, and we really can't not do it.
Thank you. I agree, and to speak to that, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Summers, if it's okay, is a couple of points to build off that. One is that we often talk about this in the context of getting support for infrastructure projects from the provincial government. If you pay now or you pay more later, and we are now going to pay more later because we just didn't do it in those years, as you mentioned, Councillor Ross Robinson. One point I do want to make, though, is although we will, in this case and in others, have to go to reserves, and on the surface, that sometimes that takes a context that it might not be, because the treasurer in the past budget process encouraged us not to budget for things we weren't certain about, and not to budget a contingency, and to just go to reserves when things come up. So I do want to remind people, as we've been saying, oh, well, we're going to reserves a few times already this year. Well, that was in fact the advice of the treasurer to do things this way. But I do, on the car specifically, Chief, and maybe I misunderstood something in the preamble, but if we only had one bidder, and did I misunderstand, are we allowed to cancel the tender and then negotiate with the bidder?
Yeah, you are, but you're also entitled to negotiate with the bidder.
Right.
So we went back and forth. Do you want to cancel it and talk to the guy, or do you just want to talk to the guy and reach a deal and award the tender, and then we know exactly what we're getting. It fits the spec.
I guess my thought on this, and where the question will go to you, Chief, is on the option of potentially canceling the tender, which would allow for a discussion around 2 sedans instead of 2 SUVs. What is the fuel economy on the vehicles? Because in that context, as Mr. Manager has said, of a changing global context and the prices of gas escalating because of the war in Ukraine, it may not just be about. It doesn't really matter to me that it's $3,000 or $4,000 less up front here. But is the fuel economy better on the sedans? In which case, that may be a more prudent investment.
So they both have the same size engine.
Okay.
It's a 6-cylinder engine in both the vehicles. And one of the reasons we had put in for one car and one SUV was we are replacing an SUV. So our fleet is a blend of cars and SUVs. It's pretty much half and half. And the SUVs do have more room in them. And we're putting more and more equipment in them with laptop computers and everything else. So that's the reason why we had put in an SUV. As far as the mileage, there's very little in the difference between the mileage of the car and the SUV.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, I was going to ask that because it might shock folks, but I'm not particularly a car guy.
Right.
But when you say that the engine is the same size, would we then mean, does that mean that they have the same fuel
The
economy?
SUV may weigh a little bit more. I don't have the exact weight, but
Okay.
it wouldn't be very much more.
Good. Thank you.
So as far as fuel economy, it would be very similar.
Well, I'm on the side of supporting the needed equipment purchase, so we'll sort of take the lump, but I will take one opportunity again to follow up on our conversation a couple of weeks ago at Standing Committee, Chief, where I am very excited about the future of all of our fleet going to electric and hybrid, and we've seen investments in Nova Scotia in police vehicles in that vein. And to me, that hopefully is going to be the future sooner than later, and that will maybe again cost a little bit more upfront, but certainly save us more on the back end in fuel costs. So, I know you're monitoring that, and I wanted to mention it tonight because I know not everyone was there at Standing Committee. So,
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Summers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly, I mean, one of the only other options, hypothetically, Chief, would be to go back out to tender. And I guess my question is, where we only had one submission, is that indicative of the fact, like limited availability, perhaps, as far, because oftentimes we get 3 or 4 different competitors trying for this, and I guess in a roundabout way, I'm answering my own question since I see you nodding. But if we went back out to tender, we're essentially gonna end up dealing with the same folks anyway. Is that
Yes,
fair
yes,
to
we
assume?
are. You know, not to certainly pick out makes or anything like that, but the supply chain for Ford, for police vehicles, they have an SUV. They're in worse shape as far as trying to supply the vehicles. And all GM have right now is the big Tahoe. And we wouldn't even want to look at one of those because of the gas consumption.
No, I wouldn't.
No, thank you, Chief. I will support this as well. I just wanted to get that in there. Thanks.
Thank you. So if there are no one else looking to speak on the matter right now, this would be, again, one where I'd ask for a mover and a seconder to move this up. Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Johnston. On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, so this will move up as well.
Thank you very much.